Welcome, everyone. It's my pleasure tonight to introduce you to Angel Schatz from the Central Texas Mycological Society. And she actually presented at the Texas Master Naturalist Conference last fall. Unfortunately, I didn't get to see the presentation, so that's why I wanted to have her come tonight. Well, I wanted her to come and speak to the chapter. And so it was an opportunity for her to share her learnings and her passion with the training class, but also to invite the chapter to join us as well. Angel leads the education, membership, and communication circles for Central Texas Mycological Society. And she is very passionate about the Central Texas ecosystem as we are. And specifically, she's very excited about making mycology education available to everyone who has an interest. She's also heavily involved in the Austin Organic Gardeners, where they are harmonizing vegetable gardening and mushroom growing, particularly by using recycled mushroom blocks. Welcome,
Yay.
Angel, and take it away.
Thank you so much for that. Okay, thanks everybody. This is going to be a lot of fun. I'm going to just share a little bit more about Central Texas Mycological Society to get us going. So we're a newly formed nonprofit. We formed in 2019, right before the pandemic. And our mission is to strengthen the conservation, research, and study of fungi in Central Texas. And we've started using a new word that is helping elevate the study of fungi. So we're starting to say funga when we talk about flora and fauna. And it's something that the International Union for Conservation of Nature, like they voted on this in 2021 to give fungi the same recognition of other kingdoms of life. And I also say kingdom, just kind of making it a neutral term and taking all the sort of monarchy out of it. But that's something that I've been seeing a lot of people start to do, but it's really everybody's choice how they want to say the word. But that's not me mispronouncing. I'll be saying kingdom a few times throughout. And it's something I feel too, like, we've been so separated through our industrial culture, like we've been so extracted in our culture from nature, and we are nature, right? So we can develop our kinship with all of these living creatures. And so I'm going to start off talking about our state mushrooms. So does anybody know the name? I think I have it up on the screen, but we worked with the legislature in 2021, and we have an official state mushroom, and Texas is now the third state to recognize a state mushroom. And we are now seeing New York and California, they have bills in their legislatures during this session where they're trying to get state mushrooms as well. So it's pretty cool that Texas is the third state now to recognize a mushroom. And so the name of it is, common names are the Texas star mushroom. It's also known as the devil's cigar. And the Latin is Coreopteris gaster. And so it's very unique to this region of Central Texas. It's found in only, we knew until this year, it was only found in one other geographic location, and that's Japan. And so scientists have been perplexed for a long time why it's so geographically distributed. And then just a few months back, Eric Cho, who took that beautiful photo of the tiny blue mushroom, lives in Taiwan, and he's an amazing macro photographer. He sent me a message on Instagram and said, hey, someone in Taiwan also found this mushroom. And so he sent me photos, and he personally hasn't seen it, but two other mycologists have photographed it, and only a couple people know about it, and they're working on getting the scientific papers updated. But I thought that was just so exciting, and it also kind of tells us too how important as community scientists it is for us to have our eyes out there and developing our kinship with fungi and seeing them, taking photos of them, and observing them when we get we get these nice rains. And so hopefully today, what I share with you, I'll give you enough information so you can go out and be able to identify mushrooms and look at them, take photos of them. But yeah, so this is our state mushroom. You know, it grows in fall, like late fall into like the early spring, and it grows next to dead cedar elms. And so the cedar elms are usually already like decayed, probably like 5-10 years old, and they start to develop this kind of like black crown shape. It's a very unique kind of shape of a stump. And so once you know kind of what type of stump to look for, what morphology of the stump and what level of decay, sort of a brown or a black crown is what they call it, or corona negra. And so this mushroom fruits, and it resembles a like a cigar. I mentioned that it's also known as the devil's cigar, and they actually in the 80s during the Satanic Panic, apparently they tried to pass this as the state mushroom with the name the devil's cigar, and you'll learn more why it's called this in a little bit, but it didn't quite go over at the time. It didn't make it through the House and the Senate and get signed by the governor at the time. And I don't know a whole lot of details, but I'm sure I could go into some archives and find more details. But anywho, that's what I've been told anecdotally. So yeah, so both the stem and the fruit body are covered with this dense layer of velvety hairs. It's like kind of fuzzy to the touch. And those hairs are called tomentum. And so this is an actual photo I took whenever we did a walk over at Zilker Botanical Garden. And there was some dapple light on the cigar shape, and it kind of made what I thought was like a little bit of a shadow of like what looked like something with horns. I don't know what you guys see, but that's what I saw, and I was just thinking of, but I really like this photo. And I was using like a macro kind of lens on my mobile phone to get that close-up texture. So yeah, so I this last winter, I have read about this mushroom, you know, and I've been seeing people taking time-lapse photography. So do you all know the movie Fantastic Fungi? We did a talk with one of the filmmakers of that movie a couple years ago, and he talked about how he would bring the mushrooms into a studio to be able to take these beautiful time-lapse photography that we really love to see online. And so I kind of, you know, knew that it like was connected to the stumps and the roots of cedar elm. So I wasn't quite sure if I could kind of remove the mushroom from its sort of substrate or what it was growing on and consuming. And so I finally saw someone else that was taking time-lapse photos of the Texas Star opening. So I decided to take some home with me. So I went out to an area where there was an abundance of them and took some that were in a nice shape. And, you know, this winter, y'all probably remember, it was very dry. So I set them up. I set up a little kind of makeshift studio in my shower, and I set up my mobile phone and put like a little kind of like a cheap like clamp light on it. And I set my camera up on my phone to take photos.
Still there, Angel?
Yeah, can you guys see it? I'm going to actually play it in a second, and you guys can tell me if you see it, okay? Because it's blank right now, I believe, but I'm going to play something in a second. So over 8 to 12 hours, the cigar shape opened up into a star-like arrangement. And so this is I've sped it up, but just imagine this was like about 8 to 12 hours and then sped up for the purpose of having a nice time-lapse photo like they show in Fantastic Fungi. And this, of course, is very crude. You know, I didn't have like the nice fancy camera equipment that you saw in Fantastic Fungi, but this is our star mushroom opening up. Were you all able to see that? Or was it jumpy? You were? Oh, good, good.
It's good. It's good.
Sometimes I hardly ever, I'm not sure if video over Zoom, how it works out. So that that's on our YouTube channel. We have like a playlist that has all Texas star things in it. So you can, if you want to look at it again, you can go check it out on our YouTube channel. But while I was taking these time-lapse photos, I told you it was set up in an unused shower in a bathroom while I was using the restroom, and the mushrooms started to hiss at me. And so I knew already that these mushrooms hissed because it was in the scientific record, like on the Wikipedia page. And I was like, oh my gosh, I've got to like stop this time-lapse photo, like turn on the audio on my camera. And I was trying to get all the settings right. Well, it took me like 2 days. And that night I did not sleep good at all. Like I kept waking up. And there was even one night where I kept them on my bedside on my nightstand to see if they would wake me up. Like maybe the hissing noise will wake me up and then I'll grab my camera and document it. But I've never been able to find like anything recorded in the history of all of our modern technology, right? Or even prior to that, like scientists using like fancy cameras and stuff. So I finally was able to capture it, and I sort of took them, I had these mushrooms kind of in potting soil in a barbecue aluminum tray. So I kind of took them on this walk, and I thought like, I knew that a change in pressure, like relative humidity, it would affect them. So I was like spritzing them with water, walking them around, maybe trying to simulate wind, like do all these sort of things that would help maybe change the pressure in the mushroom. And so this is what happened. And it was so exciting. I'll play it for you. And then I'll describe kind of what's happening. Were you all able to hear that? It's pretty faint. It sounds almost like a soda bottle opening. But I put a microphone like right up next to the mushrooms on the tray. And so what's happening with this type of mushroom is there's these spores that are kind of lined up in the body of the mushroom. And when there's like a change in humidity or pressure, the interior chamber of in the interior part of the fruit body, it shoots off all of these spores, and they're called like an ascus, or I've even heard people call them spore guns, where they just all get released, kind of like you're opening a soda bottle. But yeah, so that was very exciting for me to document. And you can also watch that on the YouTube channel. And there's, maybe if you have like better speakers, if you weren't able to hear it so well on this recording, because it is pretty faint sound. But yeah, so that's about Central Texas mycology and about our state mushroom. And I'll tell you a little bit more about myself. I grew up in the Midwest, and I was very thankful to have a family where we were really connected to the land, and we would go morel hunting every year. My grandparents, they were part of Missouri Conservation, and they would get all the flashcard sets and things like that. And the first mushroom I ever learned and knew about was called the Eastern North American Destroying Angel. And so if you know that mushroom, that's one of the only mushrooms that is deadly that actually can be found in our region. And I was really drawn to it. Of course, it had my name, and then this sort of paradox. It was so beautiful, but deadly. Like as a young person, I was like, wow, it was very humbling to see. And I was very interested. And then we would always go out every year too and look for morels around Easter time. And when I moved to Texas in 2001, I kind of forgot about mushrooms. I just thought it was, it's too hot here. And I didn't really get interested in them again until about 8 years ago, when I learned that we actually had morels here. And so I didn't actually find any until the pandemic. There's South by Southwest, and everything was just shut down. And so I went out like a lot of people and was walking the trails, trying to not get too caught up in all the news and panic at the time, just calming myself, being outdoors. And I found them right away, and it was very exciting. And it really brought back a lot of that excitement from whenever I was a kid. So the last photo here is of me growing some yellow oysters with my potatoes in my garden. And so this is what we're going to cover today. So I'm just going to go through really quickly on some of the educational programs that we offer. And then we'll talk about the history of the fungi kingdom. We'll talk about the phylogenetic tree and evolution of fungi. And then we'll talk about the life cycle. And then we'll look at a bunch of really fantastic and fun photos of mushrooms that fruit here. And they'll be in the order of the sort of divisions of fungi. So in that category. So these are just like a couple of the programs we do. We do Mycology 101, which is what we're doing today. There's also a very detailed mushroom ID class. So if you guys ever want to learn how to describe it's a whole new language. So if you really want to get into very detailed about mushroom ID, we have that class available. We also occasionally will do UT Fungarium collection walks. And this is another program that we have, and it's called Healthy Soils, Healthy Trees. And we're studying the connection of fungi to trees in our urban forest. And we're trying out different methods to see how native trees grow using different amendments and different types of fungi. And I mentioned I'm really excited about our recycled block program. And we have 3 spots in the San Antonio area now where you can pick up recycled mushroom blocks to use in your gardens, to do amendments, to help do composting. And so we partner with the local mushroom farms, and there's about 10,000 of these blocks. And what a block is essentially just organic matter. It's sawdust and usually like a grain like millet, and then the spores of the fungi. And so instead of allowing that to go into the dump, we just work and keep them out of the dump and show people all these fun ways to use them. And so we have a video series on our website, and there's about 8 or 9 different ways to do those. And I'm almost done adding like a new composting video that creates, it's a method that's called the Johnson-Su bioreactor, where you can make really microbial, fungal rich compost, and it's passive. There's no turning or smells. Like you're essentially feeding the fungi like and microbes like fungal rich fungal foods biomass. So yeah, if you're really into composting, and I'm actually going to skip through these because this just kind of gets into the details a little bit of how we started the program. But yeah, so here's a map of some of the some of the pickup sites. And in San Antonio, there's one in South, North, and then Rainbow Farms. And so we have a little color coding system. You can sign up on our website and get taken to this map. And we have a little red light, green light color coding system, so you know if there's blocks available at the time. We try our best to keep that all up to date with all of the partners that help us do this recycling program. And I already mentioned that we have these videos. We do classes as well. We'll be doing more classes in the fall. I know there's a log inoculation class coming up in San Antonio. And there's a few other things, even mushroom art related classes. So the best way to keep up with everything we're doing is just sign up in on our newsletter on our website. But our end goal, and we're going to be kicking this off next month, is we want to build or find something makeshift like a teardrop trailer or something that we can use to take to schools, to take out to the forest, take to events. Where we can do things like DNA sequencing, where we can look at things under the microscope and really get to know our fungi better out in a mobile setting. So that's kind of our long-term goal of the recycling program. And, oh yeah, so here's just a few of our upcoming events. We have one coming up on Thursday that's online and in person. It's with our Audubon Society, and it's a class on how fungi and birds intersect. And Chris Garza, who is he works for an environmental consulting agency, went to Texas A&M. He is very knowledgeable, has a degree in ecology. He's going to be doing that talk. So, and if you miss any of our talks, we also record them and put them on our YouTube channel. So there's a work day coming up too. So if you're in the Austin area or know people in the Austin area, we have a community work day at one of our preserves for the Healthy Soils, Healthy Trees program. All right, so let's get started. So first, some general history and terminology. So I always like to ask, because a lot of people are kind of shocked, like what year did fungi become a kingdom? And so there's a lot of hints on this page, and the graphic kind of gives it away too, but 1969 is the year that a scientist named Robert Whitaker published the first major revision to the two kingdom classification system. So he proposed there be 5 kingdoms, and now that means fungi had its own. So that at around the same time, we know that there was the Schedule 1 was put into place that put a stop to psilocybin and psychedelic mushrooms. And not only did that stop research on the use of those mushrooms, but a lot of fungi. There was an intense mycophobia that ran through Western culture through this sort of period up until now. There's a lot of efforts to decriminalize these things, but we've only, it's estimated that we only know about 2.6 to 4.5% of species of mushrooms or in fungi, because not all, as you'll see here in a little bit when we look at the life cycle of a mushroom, we don't know a lot of them yet. So we're going to zoom out now and look at the phylogenetic tree of life. So fungi diverged from other life around 1.5 billion years ago. And so fungi is closer to animals than plants. And so we share about more than 50% of our DNA with fungi. And so mycelium and mushrooms inhale oxygen and exhale carbon, just like us, not like plants. And so long before humans could live on the planet, the fungi kingdom started in water, began cycling nutrients and connecting living things from the roots to even living within plants like a microbiome, helping them communicate with insects, to creating colors, aromas, flavors, medicinal compounds. And so fungi is the largest and oldest living complex organism. And so it's lived through all of our mass extinctions and works with our microbes and bacteria and eventually made this livable, breathable planet for us. So super important. And so one of the things I've always heard is people will say fungi is an alien technology. And I've also heard people tell me, oil and coal is a limited resource. And no one ever told me why. And when I learned why, it really made me convicted and it was very humbling, and it made me appreciate fungi and see their magic even more. And so I'm going to explain what I'm talking about here by showing you this infographic. And so here we're zoomed in to an even more detailed phylogenetic tree that shows different clades of fungi that are grouped in categories. One's called brown rot fungi and the other one's called white rot fungi. And so this is showing the evolution of fungi across like these epochs. And so before the green line, you see what are brown rot fungi clades. And so this type of fungi decompose and consume the cellulose in wood and leave behind the lignin. And so when you're out in the forest and you see just some like what looks like brown rot like logs that are you're just seeing the brown left over, that's likely a brown rot fungi, and that's about 7% of fungi. And so on the other side of the green line, it's after the Jurassic period, and you see a group called white rot fungi. So everyone knows what happened during the Jurassic period, right? So we had this Triassic, Jurassic extinction event. And so this extraterrestrial object, an alien, right, like hit an area near the Yucatan today that profoundly affected life on land and in the ocean. So everything died. And perhaps this sort of alien or object that came down, and we know that like our meteors contain all of the stepping stones to life, it possibly contained new spores. And so now you can kind of see after this extinction event, studies and genetic testing has been able to show that fungi evolved and began consuming both cellulose and lignin. And this is why fossil fuels and coal are not an infinite resource. And so thanks to this clade of white rot fungi, it now breaks down the carbon matter, sequestering it, making soil rather than oil. And so those deposits are no longer can no longer be drilled because there's not new ones being created. And so this is still in debate. There's a lot of debate in the science community, I've read some studies that almost seem like it might have been funded by the oil industry or something, where they're trying to say like, no, coal can still be created. It had more to do with like the amount of water we had, like compressing things during this period, but it's pretty difficult to find. There's so little brown rot fungi, like fungi has evolved to eat a lot of the parts of wood now. So there's not a whole lot left over. It all gets broken down, thankfully, and becomes really nice soil for us. And so it's created the biome that we have today, where we can really coexist and have lots of beautiful plants to eat, to look at, to be a part of us. So yeah. So here is an infographic of the fungi life cycle, which largely remains hidden. And the reason we don't know much about it is because it is hidden. And so mushrooms are the fruit body or the reproductive organ in the mushroom life cycle. And for most species, it occurs in a few days and then disappears. And so many species of mushrooms do not create fruit bodies. And we'll see some examples of this near the end of the presentation. So spores are kind of like the seeds. They hold genetic information. Spores have about half of the fungi's complete set of genes. So they are this unicellular dispersal unit that has adaptions that protect the cells until the environmental conditions are in favor of growth. So when things are just right and that two spores fall on the substrate, it will start to germinate, similar to a seed. And so then those hyphae starts to form, and together with like multiple hyphae, especially since it needs two spores, a couple of them start to intertwine and develop what's called mycelium. And so this breaks down the organic matter and absorbs nutrients from its surroundings. And during this stage of growth, the mycelium expands at an exponential rate. In its environment, mycelium encounters many competitors and predators, which it repels with an amazing array of protective enzymes and compounds. And in a sense, the mycelium is the immune system of the mushroom. And so then after that, there starts to be, when there's enough mycelium, it starts to condense into hyphal knots, which develop what is called primordia or baby mushrooms. And sometimes people simply call them pins. They kind of look like bowling pins. And so from this thousands of primordia, another fruit body will emerge. The most promising ones will develop into a full mushroom. And then from there, the spores will disperse. And there's so many different ways. There's so much science on spore dispersal. You could do like I personally couldn't, but I've heard people do like podcasts and things that talk about spore dispersal. It's its own category of science. And interestingly enough, one of the first women mycologists, and she helped run the UT Fungarium, she studied the way spores moved through the air. And I can't remember the name of her title, but it had a really cool name when you study the way something moves through the air. But I just thought that was really cool that someone could be that specialized and also be a woman. That was really inspiring. And this was probably in the 60s, I believe. But yeah, that's another thing I need to go look in the archives, the UT archives, see if I can dig up some information about that. But yeah, so spores are everywhere. So every breath we take, it contains 1 to 10 detectable spores. So again, mushrooms and fungi are a big part of us. There's spores in us. And a recent study that came out last year, which sampled air in Oklahoma, found nanoparticles of spores, and it's now believed that there are 2 to 3 times more in the way of fungal spore fragments than previously thought. And so the most important part of the fungi life cycle is hidden under our feet as we walk. And so if you're ever noticing these sort of spider web like strands in the soil, this is mycelium. Sometimes you even see it on rocks when it's really, really moist. And it's responsible for creating mushrooms. So mycelium is so tiny that 1 cubic inch of soil can contain enough mycelium to stretch for 8 miles. And it's the vegetative part of the fungi. And so picking, when we talk about foraging or harvesting mushrooms or collecting them for research, the vegetative part is underneath the soil or in this mycelium. So picking a mushroom is like picking a fruit off of a tree. So you're not damaging the life cycle. You do want to do what's called like an honorable harvest. So if you're in an area and you only see one of one type of mushroom, you'll definitely want to only pick ones that where you have an abundance. So that's just one way to make sure that we're respecting the whole ecosystem, leaving some for the wildlife, leaving some for everyone, allowing that mushroom to have its full life cycle and continue to spread spores. And so these mycelium, the spider web like strands, the more they touch, the more they consume and eventually recreate itself. And so mycelium forms this important communication network, sometimes called the Wood Wide Web or the Earth's Internet. The famous mycologist Paul Stamets, he's coined those words, and this sort of web beneath our feet connects the vast system of roots from plants and trees all over the planet, kind of like an underground internet, distributing nutrients and water through this tube-like network. And so 95% or more plants form this mycorrhizal relationship with fungi. And so through these tubes of mycelium, information about the environment, such as change in soil moisture, pollution, and are communicated through the ecosystems. And so plants, insects, and microbes use this information for their survival and coexistence. So this photo here is an animated or a rendering taken from Fantastic Fungi. And so globally, the total length of fungal mycelium in the top 10 centimeters of soil is more than 450 quadrillion kilometers. And so there's a new nonprofit called SPUN, which stands for Society for the Protection of Underground Networks. And there's a branch of it opening in Austin, a company called Fungi. And Dr. Colin Averill, he did his PhD and studied at University of Texas in Austin. He's the founder of the company. And so they are doing, they're studying mycorrhizal networks, carbon capture, and climate change. We had a talk with him a couple years ago, and we're hoping that we have a new program coming up with him when he gets back to Texas. He's been living in Europe for a couple of years, helping SPUN get off the ground. But it was very exciting to see that they made their research made the front page of the New York Times. So the front page of the New York Times, the domestic and international version, read, "All mushrooms are magic." And so this was like a very monumental thing for kind of a recognition that that a lot of people in this field and enthusiasts and professionals alike, it was a very big deal. And so I agree, and I hope you will too by the end of this talk. So here's some more photos, and I'm going to skip past this video actually, but we did, City of Austin is actually the first, I'll just play this real quick and then I'll tell you what, actually I'll talk about it and then I'll play the video, but we, last fall, the City of Austin, they are doing a mycorrhizal study as well. So in one of our preserves where the vireos and the golden cheek warbler, it's like a huge area, the Balcones Canyonland Preserve. So they're working on and studying the mycorrhizal fungi and understanding its relationship with the junipers, because that tree is so important for the golden cheek warbler and the vireo birds and all of these species that call this area or call our forest home in this region. And so they want to look at this fungi and its relationship to doing habitat restoration, regenerative projects. And so we went out and helped collect mycorrhizal fungi and the roots of red oak trees and cedar elms. And so I made this fun little highlight reel that there was a lot of mushroom magic that happened that day because we saw an orchid. So there's a type of orchid called a mycoheterotrophic orchid, and it doesn't require photosynthesis. It gets all of its nutrients from the mycelium. So we were out in September last year when we were in severe drought, and it was just absolutely stunning to see that an orchid was alive and thriving in this drought and ecosystem. None of us expected it. So here's a short little video I made with some David Bowie soundtrack. So yeah, so that was a really fun project, and it's a 5-year-long study. So we're gonna go out with them again. So if you're up in the Austin area or have friends that are looking for projects and volunteer hours, it's a really fun activity to go out and collect the roots. And you kind of get to see some of the mycelium. I got a few with my macro lens. I was able to get a close up of some of the mycorrhizal fungi on the juniper roots. So yeah, so we're hoping that what we find will help create more conservation and effort into protecting our junipers from getting raised. And as we know, it's happening a lot with a lot of expansion and development in this area. So fungi can live everywhere in the deserts, volcanic lava flows, even in the ocean. So fossilized mycelium was found in lava flows that has been found to be 2.4 billion years old. And so this would make the fungi kingdom the earliest known complex multicellular life. So it can survive vacuums of space. And it's likely that at some point spores made it to this planet, like I mentioned, maybe traveling through space. So this is a photo I found in Guatemala this last year. I visited, and did a lot of hiking, but we went to one of the volcanoes and I really wanted to find a mushroom and we found one. And so here's a beautiful photo of it. So around 400 million years ago, long before humans were here, there was a giant fungi called Prototaxides that was the size of trees. It feasted on dead, growing slowly into the largest living thing on land. There's a really great documentary on PBS where you can learn more about this. There's a TV show or a show called Eons, and they talk about Prototaxides. And so here's a picture of a fossil of this particular fungi. And so mycelium can exert enough force to penetrate through asphalt and tough plastics like mylar and Kevlar. And so here you see a fungus called Phallus pudica. It's a stinkhorn mushroom. We'll see some more photos of stinkhorns in a little bit, but it can grow 6 inches.
Cheese.
Oh. And so one study estimated that a hyphae, if it was as wide as a human hand, it would be able to lift an 8-ton school bus. So very powerful stuff. And so here's some more photos of fungi and their strange shapes, including our state mushroom, some Texas morels. This is a crazy looking chanterelle. Mushrooms can also grow in circles called fairy rings, which have created a lot of superstition before science could explain the phenomenon. And so some cultures thought they would be swallowed into an afterlife if they stepped into a fairy ring. And the mycelium in the ground absorbs nutrients by secreting the enzymes. And so the mycelium will move outward from the center. And when the nutrients in the center are exhausted, the center dies, and thereby forming a living ring, sometimes thousands of feet across, from which the fairy ring arises. And so this photo on the right is of me on July 4th. I was wearing my mushroom dress and for July 4th, and I spotted a vomiter mushroom, or the green spored parasol, and which is a toxic mushroom that grows in a lot of mulch and in lawns, and it was making a fairy ring. And so here's all the cool colors of the rainbow. And this first one here, it's called the blue milk cap. And so you can actually use the latex, which comes out of the mushroom, to do paintings. And so this is an old painting from 1878 by a woman named Mary Banning. And she dipped her paintbrush into the mushroom and made this beautiful painting. And so there's some more. There's the wood bluet with some chanterelles. And then you might recognize the one on the end. This is the emoji mushroom, or the Amanita muscaria. And so like plants, fungi can see color across the spectrum using receptors sensitive to blue light and red light. And unlike plants, fungi also have opsins, the light-sensitive pigments present in the rods and cones. And so humans, as I mentioned, are more closely related to fungi genetically. And so this ability to sense color allows fungi to have avoidance responses where they don't touch one another. And so here's kind of an example of this in trees. Y'all might have seen this before, called crown shyness. And I don't think there's any trees that do that around here, but I really want to go to a forest where this is happening. So now we're going to look at some of the sort of where fungi is in the soil food web. So this is a graphic put together by the U.S. Department of Agriculture that shows the levels of decomposition and the life in the soil. And so you can see in that second trophic level is where the fungi is. And so we're going to go through and look at a bunch of different photos of these categories of fungi. So saprotrophic is the first category that we're going to go over. And so their role, and there's a lot of them in our region, They are decomposers. They're the nutrient circulators, and they are critical to the formation and regeneration of soils. And so they form close relationships with the vast majority of leafy plants, often bonding and weaving within them at the root level to create a living network that gives structure to soil, and it's scaffolding against erosion. It digests pathogens and toxins and churns carbon and sequesters it to make it bioavailable to the lower level of the soil food web, including our food and plants down the line. So here's a picture of the jack-o'-lantern mushroom, or Omophaludin subaludens. So this photo I took at Zilker Botanical Garden. And so this mushroom is fantastic for several reasons. It's toxic, not fatal, but toxic, and will make you sick for a few days. And so many people confuse this one with chanterelle. So it is chanterelle season, and I have been seeing a few photos of this mushroom as well. It's much larger than a chanterelle because we don't get huge chanterelles here like they might get in California. But they grow near dead hardwood, and they also have real gills. So the underside, you'll see real gills. Like chanterelles, they are mycorrhizal fungi, which we'll learn about here in a little bit, and see more photos of mycorrhizal fungi, but they have a mutualistic relationship. So they're not found on stumps. They're found usually further away from a tree in like leaf duff. And they also have false gills, and that doesn't really probably mean anything to anybody, but they just have like folds. They just don't look like a gilled, like what you're used to seeing with like button mushrooms or portobellas. Like they have these like kind of folds that look gillish, but they're not. But this mushroom also glows in the dark. And so this photo here was probably about a 30-second exposure. It's hard to see with the naked eye, but if you're in a absolute dark situation where no light is able to get in, like and your eyes have settled and adjusted to the absolute dark, you can see a faint glow. But really, to get a good picture or good idea of how it glows, you probably need to set up a camera that can do long exposures. And so this next photo, I originally did this presentation around Halloween. So I included, this is one of our speakers that talked with us a couple of years ago. She dressed as a jack-o'-lantern for Halloween, and I just loved her costume. I thought it was so pretty. And she lives in the Boston area. So this mushroom is an ink cap. And so you probably see these ink caps popping up right after a rain. And so the black ink-like liquid is what creates the common name. And so this fruit body grows at night after rain and then self-decomposes after spore dispersal is achieved. And this is called deliquescence, which is one of my favorite fungal words. And so they quickly dry up in the morning sunlight and collapse underneath the weight of their own bodies. And so this next photo here is of the same mushroom breaking through asphalt. So it's another one that has a lot of mycelial strength. And here's a photo by an artist named Lou Bliss, where they used ink made from the mushroom to paint or draw, I would say paint, an ink cap. And so this next mushroom is the wood ear mushroom, the Auricularia americana. So the texture, ear shape, it's easy to ID, and it's plentiful a few days after rain. So I've been seeing this one. I found some today as well because we just had rain. And this is another choice edible. It also dehydrates, so it's hard to see when it dehydrates on a log, but after a rain, they look very ear-like. And it's a choice edible, and it's been used in Asian cuisines and like soups and curries and ramens. So this photo was taken at Zilker. And if you ever find one, you have to do a Melfi, a mushroom selfie, by taking the wood ear and holding it up to your ears. And so this jelly fungus is called witch's butter, or Tremella mesenterica. And it has a translucent body and a slimy texture. And it's also another really great mushroom that's used in ramen and Asian cuisines. And so this decomposing mushroom grows on oaks. And so before it shelves out, and sometimes when we have like really hot summers, because this mushroom will grow regardless of rain, because it has the moisture within the heartwood of the tree that it's decomposing. It will sometimes look like a brain. And so in Central Texas, this mushroom grows on our heritage live oak trees that are still alive. So they're decomposing this part of the tree, the heartwood, that is, what we consider dead. And so in other parts of the country, it is decomposing logs, like downed logs. And so they're slowly kind of eating away at the heartwood. So if you find a hollowed out live oak, it's likely due to this fungi, but there's nothing to worry about. A lot of people kind of panic when they see this mushroom on their tree because they are worried that it's going to fall and break. And you should kind of watch the decomposition rate of your limbs and stuff on your trees, and make sure you trim and everything. The main thing is, we just have to make sure if we do trim our live oaks that we do the proper thing to make sure that spores are not getting into that heartwood, because we're the ones that are disrupting the life cycle of the tree to make room for our roads and sidewalks and buildings and everything like that, our modern way of life. And if we cut off these limbs, we're making the tree vulnerable to the exposure. So, but I've seen trees that are 500 live oaks that are over 500 years old that have that grow this mushroom on them, and they're just fine. So please don't cut down an old, a mature live oak because it has this mushroom on it. So here's another photo of it. And it's another choice edible. And my favorite recipe is the coconut chicken of the woods. And I put a recipe up on our blog. So yeah, so I'm going a little bit over, and if everybody's okay, I probably got 15 more minutes. Is that okay with everybody?
Keep going. We got 2 hours.
Oh, perfect. Okay. I'll go slow then. I won't talk as fast.
Okay.
Okay. So this is the stinkhorn. I mentioned it earlier. This is called the devil's stinkhorn. And so we saw it pushing through concrete earlier. This is another one that a lot of people find growing in their mulch, in their garden beds. And it's super fantastic and spooky, and it sends off this odor that attracts insects that then land on this mucilaginous enzyme, or this matter that it's shooting out, and it carries the spores, and it helps this fungus actually propagate. And so recently a study found that mosquitoes attracted to the smell die after consuming it. And so the fungus may be suitable for further investigating as a natural biocontrol agent. And I'm going to talk a little bit more about this concept with a few other species as well. And so, yeah, look out for these after rain. A couple people have been adding them on our Facebook page, or our Facebook group. I think this one specifically, one really close to this one. So this is actually edible and medicinal in parts of India, and it's actually used to treat labor pain. And so the fungus is prepared by grinding up and mixing with sugar cake. Pretty wild, right? And so 1 teaspoon is administered 3 times daily. And so in some parts of the world, it's also eaten as an aphrodisiac. So the Aboriginal Australians consider it an aphrodisiac. So here's a couple more photos. So this is like the witch's egg. A lot of stinkhorns, they come out of this egg, and this looks super spooky and cool. And sometimes people will eat just or preserve through like fermentation or just with pickling. They'll pickle these witches' eggs. And so here's another fun photo of a column stinkhorn that I really like. And this one also grows in mulch. I've been seeing a lot of photos of this one lately on iNaturalist and on different mushroom ID forums. So this one I took in Veracruz, Mexico, and it doesn't grow here, but it's the anemone stinkhorn. So this one really feels alien, right? Like I have seen photos of this one and I never got a chance to see it until I went to Mexico. But I need to look on iNaturalist, but it may have been observed in East Texas. But I was the life, it was in the right morphology. Like the flies were all over it doing their thing, but I was able to get a somewhat clear photo of it with the fly on it. So here's another exciting mushroom called the stalked puffball in aspic. And so this is very otherworldly. And so this is another one that can be found more in East Texas. I've seen it there. So the fruit body has been compared to amphibian eggs or small red tomatoes surrounded by jelly. And they consist of bright red globose head atop of a net-like stipe covered in a thick gelatinous layer. And so this one is also eaten and used in bulk medicine in some parts of the world, and it's typically considered inedible. I wouldn't be brave enough to try it, but I want to hear tasting notes from other people. So this is another fun mushroom that people have been seeing, and I've been seeing people share photos of it. There's an artist, her name is Holy Chloe, and she shared a video of one of these she found in San Antonio the other day. It's called the Dead Man's Fingers, or Xylaria polymorpha, and it looks like toes. This one actually looks like toes coming out of the ground or from underneath a log. And so it sometimes can look like burnt wood, but if you catch it when it's first fruiting, it looks like this. It really does. And this particular observation was in North Carolina, and it was taken, this person saw this around Halloween and they thought it was an actual decoration because it was just so convincing. And so this is another fungus in the same family called Xylaria magnoliae. And so this is in the same genus, and it's only grows on magnolia seed pods. And so the magnolia dates back before bees. So it's very exciting, this ancient fungal tree relationship. So you can kind of see that this mushroom has been probably breaking down the seed pods. I mean, it could have happened later too in the evolution, but there's another one too I've been seeing growing on cedar stumps. I saw it twice today, and it's called Xylaria polymorpha, or actually Xylaria, let me think. No, the polymorphia is the thick one. The common name is like a candle snuff fungus, but it grows on cedar, juniper logs, down logs and limbs. And when you brush your finger across it, and the same thing would happen with these cone flickers, a bunch of spores spread. So it kind of looks like you're using a snuff to put out a candle, and then you're seeing the smoke. So that's kind of a fun. I know that people like to impress people with their Latin, but I love common names because they come with stories. And since Latin's kind of not really, I mean, some people still use it, but I don't know the meanings of Latin words, so it's not as exciting. And I'm sure there's like storytelling if I learned Latin, but anyways. So here is a violet gymnopus, and this is found in very wet regions. I've been seeing some gymnopsis. I've never seen this purple one in Central Texas, but this one was taken in East Texas along the Winters Bayou. But striking purple color. And so here's another beautiful purple mushroom that we saw a couple of years ago when we had a lot of rain. And I've been keeping an eye out for it because we observed this one right around this time of year. And it's in the Asperonocybe species. And there's not anything, any genetic studies done in this part of Texas, but now that, that's getting cheaper to do this sort of research, we want to try to find this one again and actually get it genetically tested to see if it's a species that it's made its way here from Africa. And so we know that we have these dust storms, spores are in clouds and floating in the air. It's quite possible that that's how some spores have gotten here. And we know that with the Texas star mushroom, genetic studies have found that it's separated by 19 million years. And so that rules out any human interaction. So we know that spores can travel quite a long way. So yeah, this one's very exciting. I did take a spore print of it and send it to a friend to do genetic testing. He was unable to get a positive ID. I think maybe there was like contamination, but these are some pictures of the spores. And so there's only a few spores of mushrooms that have this like warty or kind of spiky texture. So most spores are like oval or circular shapes. So this is like some pretty cool microscopy work of this mushroom. Very cosmic, right? Almost looks like a cosmic explosion on the mushroom. And so this beautiful mushroom, the lion's mane, this is a picture of it growing in the wild. It looks like a spaghetti monster, right? So it looks a little bit different in a cultivated or a farm environment, but this the Latin of this word means pertaining to hedgehog, and it's referencing the long spines. And it so like you can kind of see how the common name and the Latin kind of differ slightly. And so this is this mushroom, as you might know, has a lot of health benefits and can also come from this non-toxic medicinal culinary mushroom. And so it's believed to stimulate nerve growth. And there's been studies that have looked at the use of it with Alzheimer's patients. And so here's another mushroom I've been seeing. You really need a macro lens or like a way to look very closely, but on hardwood leaves and sticks, you'll see these marasmius mushrooms that come in all different colors. I found some really beautiful red ones today. And if you follow us on social media, you may have seen the post about the talk we have coming up on Thursday about fungi and bird interactions. So our beautiful Vireo nests, they actually have a partnership, or not a partnership, but the fungus helps bind together the leaves and the bark of the junipers that make those type of nests with the rhizomorphs. And the rhizomorphs are simply just like thicker strands of mycelium that help hold these leaves and things together. So there's some really nice photos that Chris Garza, the speaker, took of this happening. So when I was out in the forest today, I was looking on the bark of the juniper trees. I was finding some of these beautiful marasmius red marasmius pinwheel mushrooms with their thin stipes, and just thinking about all our birds and how the fungi can help them build their nests. So here's another marasmius, and it's got a black foot. And so it gets darker as it matures. So you can kind of see this like clear stem, and it gets darker. So now we're going to talk about mycorrhizal fungi. So we learned how this one, about 95% of plants have this relationship with the mycorrhizal, and there's like a couple different kinds, the endo and the ectomycorrhizal. And so this one, if you do gardening, there's a lot of like inoculants that you can now buy. A lot of soils actually come with the inoculants already added to them if you're buying like premium soil. And so this mycelium in the mycorrhizal like helps establish the roots. It brings more water and phosphorus. It kind of mines for the phosphorus in the soil. And it also provides other macro and micronutrients to the plants. And so the larger kind of surface area of the roots that it can cover, it will help this plant grow much more abundantly. And so a lot of farmers and gardeners are starting to inoculate their crops with this type of fungi. And so some examples here of mycorrhizal fungi include truffles. So this is some pecan truffles, morels, chanterelles, porcini, matsutake. And these are the mushrooms that we end up having to pay a lot for at the grocery store because they cannot be cultivated in a farm environment. There's a couple of companies trying to cultivate morels, and the morel there's a debate, and I'm getting a paper from someone that has access to the scientific literature, but there's a debate within the mycology community on if morels are even mycorrhizal. So there's farms in Asia. They're really, really good at growing mushrooms. There's a company in Denmark, or not in Denmark, Netherlands. The Danish Morel Project is the name of it. And since the 80s, they've been working on cultivating and growing morel mushrooms. So if you really like morels like I do, check out this project and kind of follow along as people figure out how to grow mycorrhizal fungi. I think it's a decomposer, but it's really picky. Like what I've heard from people is that it likes to decompose the roots of grasses in like those early spring ryegrasses. So very interesting, very picky. And that doesn't seem like it would be enough of something to decompose and eat. So there's something else. It could be both. And that's the thing too. Like we try to bucket everything into categories, but it might be like partially mycorrhizal, partially decomposer. Like it could be doing more than one thing at once. Chewing and walking. It's chewing gum and walking at the same time. So this is one mushroom that I mentioned that really captivated me when I was young, and it's called the Eastern North American Destroying Angel. And so it can cause extensive damage to your liver, kidney, and spinal cord, and the symptoms are delayed, and you don't notice until 5 to 24 hours, in which vomiting, cramps, delirium, convulsions, and diarrhea will begin. So this is the one you should know, and definitely don't consume anything that looks like this. So as I mentioned, only 1 to 2% of mushrooms are poisonous, and only about a dozen are fatal. And there's only one that is found currently in Central Texas that is fatal. And that's this one here. It's a bunch of different photos of it, and it's different stages of growth. And It can be spotted in East Texas and Bastrop area where you have pines and oak forest. So loblolly pines. And I know there's maybe a few places in San Antonio. I don't think you guys have a whole lot of pine forests where you are, but just be careful because there are amanitas and a lot of them are popping up now. And I personally just don't eat any amanitas. I've eaten a certain species when I'm in Mexico because I just trust that in the markets that, I've bought the Amanita Caesar mushroom that they grow there, or they don't grow, that they forage in the mountains there. I've tried that one, but really that's the only one that I've tried. And so here's another mushroom, the peach colored fly agaric. So the Amanita persina. And so this is toxic if it's not properly like people sometimes eat this and parboil it. And it's also another mushroom that it's can be used for a lot of medicinal reasons, and it's gained a lot of popularity. It's like one mushroom that isn't illegal. It's legal to consume it. And so there's a lot of I've even seen like gummies with this mushroom in it. People using it for mental health, like, and for sleep aid, all kinds of things. But we did a talk 2 years ago or a year and a half ago, around December, with Dr. Kevin Feeney. He's from Washington State, and he is the author and put together a book called the Fly Agaric, a compendium of this mushroom. And so he talked about all of its medicinal uses and how people are using it as medicine. But again, like, this is one that I don't advise anybody go out and use unless they're either buying it from someone that's an expert or they are with an expert and very confident. But this is the one, this is the mushroom too, or it's in the same category. There's a lot of folklore and concepts around, or ideas about, how this mushroom created the myth of Santa Claus. So yeah, there's a lot of really fun articles online that you can read about Santa Claus and the Amanita muscaria, or the Amanita fly agaric. So yeah, so if you want to go down that rabbit hole, it's a fun one. And so here's one, the American Caesar mushroom. And so this species is narrowly defined, and there needs to be much more research. And I recently found a really beautiful one in Lake Bastrop State Park, or not state park, it's a LCRA park, but it's one that there's a lot of back and forth on, is it edible or not? And so there just has to be more research and studies done into what compounds are in this mushroom. So hopefully we can do more collections and have more science into this field. So here is the witch's cap, or the Hygrocybe conica. And so this genus is found all over North America, scattered on ground near hardwoods and junipers. And it gets its common name from the witch cap shape. And it surfaces usually a couple days after the rain. So within the Hygrocybe, or the wax cap genus, you will find all kinds of brightly colored mushrooms in shades of orange and green and purple. So now we're going to talk about the third division of fungus, and it's parasitic mushrooms. So parasitic mushrooms prey on plants, trees, animals, and even humans. And this type of fungus weakens trees and nourishes other organisms. Some common examples are dandruff or foot fungus. Another common example is powdery mildew. And so the largest organism on our planet is the humongous fungus in Oregon, and it's considered parasitic. And so it's an edible mushroom commonly called the honey mushroom. And in 1998, a team from the US Forest Service set out to investigate the cause of large tree die-offs in East Oregon. And several species of fungi belonging to this Amarilla genus, which is popularly known as the honey fungus, were found to cover 2,385 acres. And so they colonize and kill a variety of trees and woody plants. And so they're found in Austin, and I don't know if I've seen them in San Antonio, but if they I usually find them around our live oak trees. And I don't know if they're considered the species we have here, if they're considered parasitic, because our live oaks are very hardy trees. So I think they might just be kind of decomposing, maybe like dead parts of roots or something like that. So here is a fungus called hypomyces, which is a fungi that parasitizes mushrooms and covers them with powders, and looks like a crust on the mushroom. And so often the parasite fungus transforms the host mushroom that it's impossible to tell what the host would be. And so some species of hypomyces transform the host into choice edible mushrooms. So the lobster mushroom, for example, is a rusula or a lactarius mushroom that has been covered with a bright orange hypomyces species, Lactoflorum. And so this species was found in Texas on July 4th, the year we had 2 100-year floods in Central Texas. So I was shocked to find it. I couldn't believe what I was seeing because they're very rare in our area, but it happened. And I happened to be there during the time we had 2 100-year floods. So it felt magical to me that I got to witness this. So predatory fungi, this shoehorn oyster, I've been seeing these fruit everywhere lately. Hohenbulia petaloids. I think I'm saying that right. It can supplement their protein needs. So this particular fungi eats nematodes. It traps them, which are like as you may know, they're the small flat worms that are abundant in soil. And so the fungi have these sticky knobs of hyphae that grow through the wood, and these sticky knobs attach to the nematodes as the nematode attempt to eat the mycelium. And so the nematode thrashes around and additional parts of his body become stuck, and the hyphae then grows into the body of the nematode and digests it. And so it provides the fungus with nitrogen it needs. And so it makes this fungi actually considered carnivorous or predatory. And here's another photo of some macro or microscopy showing another type of predatory fungi. This is oyster mushrooms that actually strangles the nematodes with their hyphae. And so pretty exciting stuff. And we had a speaker cover this topic, and it's recorded on our YouTube channel. So if you're interested in predatory fungi, he talked about it for about an hour and a half. So you could definitely learn about all the crazy predatory fungi that we know of. And I'm sure there's more than what we know for sure. So does anybody know what ant this is? So this is the tawny crazy ant. And so this ant was found by an exterminator in 2002 in Houston, and it was named for its quick, unpredictable movements. And so the ant produces and covers itself with formic acid, which actually kills fire ants. And that might sound like a good thing, but this species is an even bigger colony and kicks out all types of ants out of their homes. And it even eats through our electric boxes and causes all kinds of problems. And this was a very shocking thing when it was found in Houston, especially, it was found near the ports because it probably came in through the shipping ports. And with NASA being there and all of its electrical equipment and things like that, they were really, really worried and doing all these preventative pest control things to try to eradicate this mushroom. And recently, and we also have a recording of a talk on our YouTube channel, scientists at UT Brackenridge Field Lab, which is in Austin, part of the University of Texas Austin system, they were able to put the brakes on this invasive species of crazy ants using a fungal pathogen called Myromyconilandria. I think I butchered that one. But it is a type of fungus that is in the stomachs. They found it naturally in the stomachs of these ants, and it eats at the fat cells and then kind of explodes the ant. And so it was already living within the ant. So they were able to cultivate it in a lab environment and then use it as a biopesticide. And they were able to eradicate populations at a state park near the Mission Butterfly Center in South Texas. And they're working on eradicating a colony in Pace Bend Park. But I've heard that this particular crazy ant, for some reason, it likes the crevices and holes of RVs, and that's how it gets into state parks. And so it's kind of like the zebra mussels, right? Like we just don't know what our all of our kind of disruption and like moving things and coming in and out of different ecosystems. We have to be extremely careful and tread lightly and try not to bring in anything that doesn't belong in the area. And so if you've ever seen Planet Earth, you've probably seen the zombie ants. And this idea has kind of infiltrated popular culture with the popular HBO show that's based off of the video game. And so this zombie ant is another example of parasitic fungi. And so it infects the fungus and it controls the mussels, driving the ants away from the colony to the highest point on the tree for the best spore dispersal, eventually taking out the whole colony. And so to the left, you see this fungus growing out of the ant's head. So you see some more examples of this in these pictures were taken in Big Bend. There's also another fungus that is similar to this that I've observed that attacks millipedes. So I've seen millipedes like high up on blades of grass. And I need to put a slide in here for that one because it's one that's very common. And when we do our UV night walks, when we go out with fluorescent and look for fluorescing, millipedes absorb the UV light during the day, and so you can really find them very easily going out with your UV light. So we're working with a mycologist at University of West Virginia, where he's trying to determine the species of this particular mushroom or fungus that's found in the millipedes. So here's one cordyceps that actually grows here, Cordyceps tenuipes, and it infects the larvae of insects. And here's another one that you can find here, looking on the underside of leaves, and it's germinates on the envelope of a spider. And after germinating, the fungus penetrates the host body with a yellow coat of mycelium and digests the spider from the inside out. And when the spider dies, stiff lavender clave begins to shoot up out of the spider cadaver. So yeah, look for this one underneath the leaves. So here's a really spooky photo of, and this isn't observed in Central Texas, but we do have tarantulas here. So I don't know if it just hasn't been seen or observed, but this is called, there's a couple different types of cordyceps that attack in the bodies of tarantulas. And so it's believed too that, every insect has some sort of fungus that kind of parasitizes it. So it's hard to know, like, if it's because we don't quite understand like why this happens or when this happens. Because a lot of times, and we'll talk a little bit about like the fungus that periodical cicadas have, but here's the Cordyceps militaris that no one's found it here that I know of, but it's a very popular medicinal mushroom and it's used for many, many things. And so several years ago, someone that was 23 years old, high school dropout, figured out how to cultivate this mushroom on wheat berries. So this photo is showing it on the larva of a caterpillar, but now you can grow it on rice, wheat berries. So kind of back to this, another parasitic fungi. So the love bug gets a new name with this fungus that infects periodical cicadas. And so the fungus Massospora is caused when certain species of locusts mate like crazy, even after their abdomen gets blown off by the fungus. So it infects the cicadas that are hibernating, that come up every 13 or 17 years. And their mating behavior has like perplexed scientists for many years. And so then a recent study in fungal ecology, a team of researchers found that this species contained both the chemical that's found in bath salts. I don't know if you guys remember that amphetamine crisis that happened like maybe 5 or 6 years ago. This is before the fentanyl crisis, but it also had psilocybin. And so males also try to copulate not only with the females, but also the males. And so this type of fungus is found in the soil and infects them as they come up to mate. And so then they die right after that. And so, yeah, so this is this kind of idea of pathogenic fungi. It's another one where it's like, we don't know why it's pathogenic per se. And we're kind of getting beyond like a lot of academic study in the West focuses just on plant and fungal pathogens that really are, and a lot of it is funded and driven by the chemical industry. And so we're starting to get to another layer, like a deeper layer, like let's take care of our soils. Let's try to understand what's happening within our soils, and let's try to understand this relationship of these pathogenic fungi. Like, why do they sometimes take out certain species of insects? There's something else happening maybe in the dark matter, like that we don't quite understand. There's some other communication happening within our ecosystem that we don't have the synthesis or ability to even study per se. So we just have to kind of observe the nature and try to work with it and use these pathogens as biopesticides, perhaps when we do create problems because of human disruption. So yeah, so we're now to our last category, and then we'll get to Q&A. So this last category is very exciting. It's endophytic fungi. And so it lives in the plant for at least part of its life cycle without causing any apparent disease. And so endophytes are ubiquitous and have been found in all species of plants studied to date. So most of endophyte and plant relationships are not well understood, mostly because they are hidden and do not always form mushrooms. So you're looking here at a magnified image that shows fungus in leaf tissue. And so endophytes enhance host growth, their ability to absorb nutrients, and improve the plant's ability to tolerate stresses such as drought, salinity, decreases stress by enhancing plant resistant to insects, pathogens, herbivores. And it's sort of like a microbiome, or we call it, mycologists have been calling it a mycobiome. So endophyte fungi has been a great interest in the last few decades And if you like to get on Google Scholar and read studies, you can type in like a plant name that you're really into and then read about the endophytes with that plant, and you'll have your mind blown. And I've done that on a few species and a few plants. I'm going to share a few examples, but you can learn about like how these enzymes that are found within these plants too are essential to medicine, can be used for biocontrols. One example, researchers discovered several years back, they discovered a fungal endophyte associated with pepper plants that creates the compound capsaicin, so which we know makes pepper spicy. And so this fungal relationship allows the plant to deter insect and also other fungal kind of pathogens. So you probably know that like you can just hang peppers up to dry, right? And they don't rot like other fruits do. So that's because they have this fungi in them that has this capsaicin that prevents insects from being attracted to them. And then they are allowed to just dry out naturally from the air, and they aren't able to, or they don't decompose like you might see with other fruits. So here's another example of the fungal diversity. So I was reading a study about wild grapes. And so it shows that adding endophytes to the soil increases the beneficial compounds that produce the polyphenols that can also be a biocontrol agent. So as we learn more about these, we might be able to add endophytes, microbes, and fungi into the soil to make our plants healthier, to grow the beneficial medicines and compounds, make our grapes more grapey, change the colors and pigments, all those sorts of wonderful things. And so just to kind of summarize, we really, fungi is beneficial to us and our environment, with the help of saprophytic and mycorrhizal fungi. Fungi cycles carbon and sequesters it, transfers nutrients for better plant growth. It helps our roots get established. It helps prevent erosion and helps with water retention. There's ways that fungi are being used to do bioremediation and mycofiltration. There's some studies where they're looking at using fungi to help eat plastic. We also, fungi is beneficial as a source of nutrients. As we know, a lot of people have vitamin D deficiency. We spend a lot of time indoors. We don't get enough sunshine. So mushrooms have melanin in their, and they're able to absorb absorb the UV, have that vitamin D. They also have a lot of complex sugars, the beta glucans, which are really good for our stomachs and help us build a strong stomach. They have trace minerals, a lot of the trace minerals that we don't have in our foods, a lot of because of our soil depletion. Yeast, molds are also considered fungi. So all the wonderful things like bread, kombucha, wine, beer, coffee, chocolate, just so many things require yeast. And then our medicines, penicillin is a fungi, and it's changed our entire healthcare system. And it's something that we're having to deal with now because we overuse our antibiotics. And so we're looking at other ways that we can solve these problems. And so we can also use fungi for making things like leather. We can also make natural dyes with fungi. I know there's a couple companies looking at using mushrooms for packaging and using them to make construction materials. So that kind of concludes things. And I have one trivia question, and we can do kind of, I can ask the question, and the first person that puts it in the chat, we can do a membership giveaway, and I can send out, we have some fun glow in the dark stickers, and I could send, yeah, fun little membership care package your way. So let me know when everybody's ready and we'll do a quick trivia.
Okay, when you're ready.
All right. So what is the type of clade or grouping of fungus that has slowed down the creation of coal? Y'all remember? Oh, Kelly. Kelly for the win. Okay, I'm going to give you an email and you can just send me your address, and I'll get you your name and address, and I'll get you in our member role. So let me just click to the next slide so you guys can look at the pictures of reminder photos. So yeah, so white rot fungi. That was fun. Okay, and so if you're wanting to learn more, I mentioned we have like a YouTube channel. If there are any other groups that you all want to share information about us or know other people that want mycology education, we have a place to sign up on our website. Here's some book recommendations. And then we'll do Q&A.
Okay, Angel, awesome presentation.
Yay.
Yay. Okay, so I'm going to go back to the beginning.
Okay.
And some of them you probably should have answered, but I still wrote some of them down. First of all, you said you were gathering some today for your to be preserved. How do you preserve mushrooms for your
For the fungarium? Yeah. So there's a couple steps. So the first step is getting really good photos when I'm out in the field. That's super, super important. So you want to make sure you take like a picture kind of in situ, like you want to know the tree that it's nearby. You want to know the substrate, what it's growing in. So kind of think about it like doing a medium shot of the mushroom so you can get its environment. So get that photo first, and then you want to get a nice photo of the cap. And then you want to get an underside photo. And if you don't have to pull it up, it's nice to see the photo kind of in its natural environment. So yeah, so if you can do that, but a lot of times it's hard to get the underside without taking it up. So I use a dull knife. I have actually like, if you camp, you know how you can get those like aluminum stakes. I just kind of use like a dull knife to like kind of dig in the soil a little bit, because I don't want to break the mushroom. And especially with amanitas, like you want to make sure you get all the way down to the soil. And so once I remove it or dig it up, I will take a nice picture of the underside. And if you do have like a macro attachment for your phone, you can take a photo of the gills, the underside, or the pores. Some mushrooms have pores. And so getting all those photos is good. And then you want to make sure that you have like, some people carry like little, like a tackle box or like something that will protect the mushroom where it still gets airflow and isn't like enclosed, because the mushroom's still breathing even after you pull it out of the ground. So you can also, if you have a big basket and it's not going to get knocked around or hit. Sometimes I've had mushrooms. I've had a big water bottle in my basket with mushrooms and it'll crush them. So it's always good to have, like I carry sometimes just a bunch of little containers. I'll save, plastic containers, to-go containers and things like that. And if you have some that are partitioned, that's a good thing to do. Some people will take brown paper bags and just separate them in the brown paper bag, and that prevents them from getting crushed. So once you get them home, you're going to want to dehydrate it right away. So you want to have like either a dehydrator specifically for doing mushrooms, or like have a way to easily clean it. Like I just I have an air fryer that goes all the way down to like a really low temperature. And so I'm able to use the very low, I think around 120, 115 is like a good temperature. And our friend Alan Rockefeller, who is a pretty prolific amateur mycologist that really is into taxonomy, and he's discovered all these new species. He will just put them, if he's traveling a lot, because he travels all over the world doing taxonomy, he will just put them on his dashboard. So try to find some place in Texas. We know it's like really, really hot, but that's like a place where it can breathe and stay dry. So if you can't get to your dehydrator right away, that's what some people do. So after you dehydrate the mushroom, you then will put it in the freezer, and you just want to kill off any maybe bugs or anything that might have been living. It's bugs and little, you probably heard of fungus gnats. They will lay their little eggs inside the pores or like inside the gills and kind of make their way into the mushroom, and it's yummy food for them. So you just want to make sure that all that is killed. And so once you have them dehydrated, you can give it to your nearest herbarium. And I'm not sure what is happening in San Antonio, but we're working on getting intake process for the UT Fungarium. So the person we were working with, she actually left to go work at Kew at the beautiful Kew fungarium, or not fungarium, it's the herbarium in the UK. So she has her dream job, but they haven't filled her position. So we're looking at trying to we don't want to create a bunch of work for people that work there, because we know everybody's overwhelmed, especially in these fields. There's not a lot of funding, but that's something we want to try to work on, get some funding, and maybe there's somebody that we can help get that program started. But yeah, so hopefully we'll have like a better intake system, and people can maybe even mail their collections in. But the main thing is like getting really good photos, adding them to iNaturalist, trying to get a positive ID. If you can't, if you don't feel confident in your ID skills, you can always ask people on different groups. On our website, we have links to a couple different resources. People are very helpful on our Facebook group. There's a lot of experts on there. There's also experts. There's a Texas Mushroom ID group. There's like just a mushroom ID group that's national. So yeah, and anybody from all over the world can go on these groups and get help with ID. And there's people, thousands and thousands of people just waiting. And it's kind of alarming. Like I've been out in the woods. Usually I'll wait to do my studying. I'll just make sure that I get good photos when I'm out in the field, because a lot of times you don't really have good data or Wi-Fi or any way to connect when you're out in the woods. So I'll wait till I get home to where I can look at books, compare lots of photos, and just take my time and not feel rushed. I can really enjoy being in the forest and disconnected from this the other internet. So,
Thank you. Okay. When you said kingdom, are you spelling that K-I-N and leaving out the G?
Yeah, I just dropped the G. Yeah,
Okay.
some people were saying queendom for a while, and I think even we were saying that for a while, just because it feels like female empowerment, but it's like, that's the same thing kind of as the old way. So we just have to say kin.
Yeah.
So we can be
Our biology textbooks in high school haven't changed yet, though.
No, and even things outside of kind of like textbooks, but it's something I learned that this isn't something I made up, but it's something that Juliana Farici, she has a global nonprofit. She is the Fungi Foundation, and they are the first country in the world, Chile, she's in Chile. they're the first country in the world to protect fungi, and they're kind of the leading edge, in my opinion, of recognizing fungi, protecting fungi, and doing amazing things to advance the study of fungi. And so she's also started to use that terminology. So it's kind of like with a lot of science, it can take some time, but it's always changing. And it's just a way for us to advance and kind of get away from these like old ways of classifying things, because it's not, there's no gender in these sort of, especially with fungi, that's the gender thing is like, and we have a presentation too on like sexual reproduction of fungi. So there's no gendered language in fungi. So it's just a way to kind of like get away from all that.
Okay, you were showing the fungal blocks. What are the fungal blocks used for? Are they used for your gardens, or how does those work?
Yeah, so those are decomposer fungi or saprophytic. And so those we teach people, and we have about 7 or 8 videos showing people how to compost. And the way I describe it in our classes is it's called composting extra. So you're like decomposing all your cellulose and woody matter, your wood chips and things like that in your garden, and also growing mushrooms. So there's a bunch of fun ways you can use them in your gardens. And
Okay.
so there's a lot of detail to that. And we do like a special class just on that. But we do have about an hour's worth of videos showing you how to, and it's under the low-tech mushroom cultivation program. So you can learn how to watch some of those videos if you're curious how to use the blocks that you might be able to pick up at a couple of the locations in San Antonio.
Okay. One person asked, you had said that fungi was one of the earliest, most complex life forms here on Earth. And then you had also mentioned that some fungi could have possibly come from space. This person wanted to know if they did come from space, would they be completely unrelated to life here on Earth?
Yeah, like, and that's kind of like why like people are like they're alien, right? Like, and I think a lot of people say that because they're so mysterious, because we only see them, we only get the opportunity to see them when we have a mushroom when it rains. And in Texas it's so infrequent. And so with what we're learning about, and there's like even been trips where people have gone to meteors and stuff and like mined them to look and see what is happening on those meteors. So we're finding that like the building blocks of life are there, but at some point there may have been some parts of life that were happening on another planet that was in the space dust, that then joined our planet. And that's when we saw this sort of evolution of fungi take place. So when that meteor hit in the Yucatan that caused the extinction of dinosaurs, we can study fossilized mushrooms, and we can look at things in the fossil records. And there's other things they can do with genetic testing where they can see now that like things changed drastically on our planet after that meteor hit. And we don't know, like maybe that meteor had new building blocks of life and it changed things a lot. Like we know so much changed, like plants changed. We had different animals, humans weren't even here. Like, so there may have been some building block that helped create mammal, like there's so much evolution that happened after that period.
Okay.
And this is over millions of years. So the first part of that question was like, if it's the most complex, the oldest complex organism, even before that other, the evolution of fungi happened, it was already doing really complex things, helping plants kind of get their footing. So, we know that there were mosses and things like that didn't even have roots that were on this planet when fungi and like microbes were here in the water, when we were kind of a water planet. And the theories that are out there are that like fungi helped establish and helped plants get roots. And so eventually plants evolved and got roots because of the help of mycorrhizal fungi.
Okay. The person who asked the question came up with some others, but I'm going to wait and ask her question later if we have time. Okay. Next person needed to know about the haploid diploid. She said, explain how haploid spores became diploid.
I actually am not super familiar with that, but I know that the person that did our sexual reproduction of fungi class, which was we had it in April. The recording is on our YouTube channel, and he described how that happens.
Okay.
And
I believe it's the fusion of two of the hyphae is what I seem to remember.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah. I know that there's also some spores, and there's some things that happen where there's and I think that can happen in plants too. Maybe I don't know a whole lot about plant reproduction, but I know that there can be asexual phases and stuff too with the fungi, in the way the spores, you only need one spore sometimes. And even I know that reading up on our Texas star mushroom, our state mushroom, they discovered a asexual phase of reproduction of the Texas star. So it's found a way to adapt in its environment.
Okay, I think the hyphae are all haploid, and when they fuse together and they produce the fruiting body, that's the part that's diploid.
The diploid.
And
Okay.
within the fruiting body, it undergoes meiosis to produce the haploid spores.
Okay, yeah,
It's been a while since I've done that, but just in case. Okay. Do mycelium underground freeze?
So mycelium can freeze, and it goes similar to some plants, it'll be dormant, and it can handle really extreme conditions. So if you kind of imagine our fungi living through mushrooms, fungi being able to go live through all the mass extinctions, you can imagine some of the periods of life on this planet went through some major ice ages and freezes, and fungi is able to thrive through that. And I actually have I shared it on our social media back in I think it was in December. Circle Acres Preserve is where we have the myco research station, and they've done a lot of myco remediation and stuff out there, and it's a very fungally rich area. It used to be a former dump site from the city of Austin, but the land steward there, maybe 6 or 7 years ago, he saw mycelium growing off of a log onto an there's kind of a wetland in the area. And so, yeah, we have photos of mycelium growing on ice. And of course, I haven't lived in a cold climate in a long time, but I do know that within the cultivating communities, they will do things like cold shock mushrooms to kind of change. Something happens, and I don't know how to describe it, but something will happen where then the mushrooms will fruit again. They're kind of shocked into fruiting again because there's this change in its environment. And it kind of makes me think of how I got the mushroom to hiss, a change in the humidity, a change in the conditions. There might have been something happening kind of electrically. And so this is a common practice in the mushroom cultivation scene. But yeah.
Okay, great. You had a picture of the field guide up there from the Gulf Coast. Is that the one you would recommend?
Yes. So this is the newest one for our region. And David Lewis, mycologist David Lewis, who started the Gulf States Mycological Society, he did a lot of the work on that. And if you happen to have the ability to come to East Texas in June, we're going to have 3 walks at different preserves with mycologist David Lewis. So I'm going to be getting those up on the calendar soon. But
Awesome.
he's a real treasure, and he's getting up there. Like, he's retired now. He's no longer kind of helping with the Gulf States mycology. So he's really kind of enjoying life and living with his son. But we're so happy to be able to get to know him and spend time with him and continue to learn from him. He has such a breadth of knowledge, and he works with the Texas A&M Fungarium. They've given him a space to take to put all of the collections of fungi that he's preserved. So so he's added so much to the field of mycology. And I want to note too that there is a new, so the National Audubon, they published a really great book, and Gary Linkoff, he wrote, he's now passed, but he wrote the original field guide for North America. And just last month, in April, they published a new edition. And so if you want one, if you travel a lot and you want one that's for all of North America, that's the one I would recommend. So just look up National Audubon Field Guide, Mushroom Field Guide.
Okay.
And they just came out with a new edition. And we're actually going to be giving them away, one online and one in person at our Ornith Mycology. I think I'm saying that right. Our birds and fungi talk on Thursday night.
Okay. Used to be you would hear deaths from kids going out and trying to make hallucinogenic tea from mushrooms. How many deaths would you attribute to fungal?
From mushrooms or in general? So I don't know. I don't keep track of like poisonings, but I know that there is published studies on that. But with psilocybin mushrooms, I don't believe there's ever been any deaths. I do know with other toxic mushrooms there have been, but there is like I think that there is the poison control. They keep separate records for mushroom deaths, and a lot of it happens with death caps, and we don't have death caps here. They're a type of amanita that's found on the West Coast, and I believe also the East Coast. And you can look this up and see where they're found on iNaturalist. But that one, I think people are just a little more risky, and it looks like some that are edible, and I don't know. I just try to stay away from amanitas.
Okay. Okay. A couple of other really good questions have come in. How would you characterize understanding among native and indigenous populations as to their knowledge about fungus and the food web and the human uses?
Yeah. So I would say that there's a lot of wisdom there that needs to be known. And we, through like colonization and cultural erasure, a lot of that has been lost. We actually work with one ethnomycologist. She's from Brazil, and she also works with the Fungi Foundation that I mentioned. They have a program called the Elders Project. And she did a program with us last year. I believe it was in September. And she did a talk on the ethnomycology of culinary, like edible mushrooms. So she lived with the Lakota people in North America for several years and learned all of the ways they used mushrooms. And so they accepted her into the community, and she's been able to kind of learn a lot. And she's now able to share this information with a lot of us Westerners. But it's something that there's been a lot of erasure. And our Mycological Society, we're doing a lot of events and things that create reciprocity. And coming up in September, we're going to be, we have a program where we're going to be talking about the ethnomycology of the psilocybin mushroom and the Amanita muscaria mushroom, which have been used by indigenous cultures all over the world going back thousands of years. And so we have an ethnomycologist that will be talking about that. And then we'll be joined by a Mazatec historian. His name is Inti. And if you know about Mazatec culture, that is where North American people learned about the psilocybin mushrooms. So there were scientists that went down from North America to Oaxaca, Mexico, and they kind of used their resources and were kind of coercive and learned about the sacred mushrooms that had been used for thousands of years in this region of Mexico. And it was the front cover, made the front cover of Life magazine. And it kind of changed the whole, this was in 1961, I believe. It kind of changed, a lot of people were wowed by it. And it was during the Cold War, where the US was pouring a lot of money into trying to figure out different ways to do mind control, all kinds of things. And so this culture in Mexico, the Mazatec culture, has since their culture has been destroyed because there was all this tourism, people going down there. I actually met someone at the Texas Mushroom Conference that had gone down to this part of Mexico in the 80s to partake in the magic mushrooms, and something that was very sacred to this community. Even the children take them there. It's something that's not considered drugs like we know of it here. It's considered medicine, and it's how they connect and commune with their ancestors, with their nature. It's how they connect. And so all that was destroyed when tourism was brought to this region of the world. So we are doing this event to try to create like some sort of reparation and repair the damage that was done by Western culture. So if that is interesting to you and you want to give, if you've benefited from these medicines too, or partaken in those, and you want to give back to the culture that was damaged, it's something you can do.
Okay, we have time for 2 more questions, so we need to make them short and quick because our time is up. When we buy compost or we buy something to inoculate our soil that has fungi in it, do we need to worry about it coming from New York versus our soil or any of?
Yes, you do. It's very important to try to have the native microbes, the native fungi. So try to buy local soils. And so I try to stay away from big box stores. I know that even Home Depot carries local soils and stuff like that. So not all of them, but just be very cognizant of that, because it's not just the fungi, it's the microbes too. And so if you have healthy soil, if you're buying healthy soil, some of them add the native mycorrhizal, but if your soil is healthy and you're taking care of it, you're going to invite all kinds of good activity and get the microbes and stuff you need there.
Okay. And one last thing. So many of us have pets and dogs. When like one person said they had playground mulch covering the entire backyard, and they have lots of mushrooms that just pop up. Do they need to worry about their dogs eating them?
So there are a few mushrooms that can be toxic to animals. There was the one that I had mentioned, the vomiter that made the fairy ring. So that one usually grows in lawn and in mulch, and it's real big and it has green spores. So that's one way to know what it is. It's one of the few mushrooms with green spores. So do a spore print, and it's kind of a foresty, rusty, or not rusty, but a foresty kind of green color. But that one is, it's a bit bigger. A lot of the mushrooms you see growing in mulch is like stinkhorns and ink caps, and those pets are fine. And I've known a lot of people tell me that pets usually, they just want to sniff them. But I don't know. I see people concerned, but I don't know how many people's pets are actually eating the mushrooms, but I'm want to know more. I haven't been on a lot of poison pages myself, but
I
if
can
it
speak
does
for
happen.
that. My dog ate one, it's couple $1,000s later.
Oh no. Was it throwing up?
Oh, that, and then it just became so listless and it's drooling and it wouldn't move.
Oh no.
Oh, yeah. Okay, so we want to know how we can get involved as volunteers or become members.
Yeah, that's my next slide.
Okay.
So you can take a picture of this QR code or go to our website. But yeah, we appreciate anyone that wants to be a supporting member. Membership is you can have a family membership for 30, 25 annual for a single membership. We also have lifetime memberships if you are feeling very generous. But all of that helps support our programs and helps us further mycology education in Central Texas. And so you can also, if you're not ready to become a member, you can follow us on social media and check out our website for all of our content. But thank you everyone for giving your time tonight and learning about mycology.
Awesome, awesome. Okay, guys, Jeanette?
So Angel, are there any current volunteer opportunities for San Antonio folks?
Yeah, so right now we have the mushroom block pickup program. So we have opportunities for people if they want to help supply blocks at some of the sites where people can pick them up. The farm is in Buda, so it's a bit of a ways. But we're working on offering gas reimbursement too. That's something we just need to get kind of set up on our website where people can upload their mileage and get receipts and all that kind of stuff. So we're hoping to offer that soon. But yeah,
So I
that's
know that Angelica Torres,
yes,
who's class 47, is
yeah,
now in your leadership team, in fact.
she is, and she's actually presenting right now to the Austin Native Plant Society.
Yeah,
So we're
I
doing
saw
the
that.
presentation at the same time.
So I thought it might be a good idea for us to talk to her and see how she
Yeah.
thinks we might get Alma Mary Master Naturalists involved with you guys.
Yes.
And also to see if she would be willing to get your presentations approved for us to get advanced training credit to watch your various presentations. So
Yeah,
I'll reach out to her since she's a member.
perfect.
If not, we'll recruit another volunteer to do that.
Yeah.
I think several of us are interested in the ornithology
Yes.
presentation on Thursday, excuse me.
Mhm.
But we have a class on Thursday, so many of us will not be able to see
join.
it. So I'm going to turn the Bear Audubon people onto that and see if
Ooh,
they
yeah.
will host you guys doing that presentation for
Oh,
them.
we would love
we can-
that. Oh my
we
God.
can enjoy that as well. Okay, before you go, Cheryl, put up the slide that you have that has the little blue mushroom on it.
Oh yes, I love this one. Eric Cho is such an amazing photographer.
Angel, make sure
Yeah.
you read the chat. There's so many wonderful comments about your
I'm
presentation.
seeing it. Oh, you guys are so sweet. Oh my gosh. Such
Okay,
beautiful.
see that little blue mushroom?
I
Well,
love
look
that one
down at the
so
right-hand
much.
corner, how tiny it is.
So gorgeous.
I'm not seeing it, guys.
It's the one right in the middle. This one. Oh yeah, and you can see the thumb, the finger. So this is the macro, real zoomed in, and you can't really see how small it is until you see the scale. That photo in the bottom right corner where you see his hand. Oh, there you
Cheryl, did you find this on iNaturalist?
Yes, that middle blue mushroom was an iNat photo of the day during the Study Nature Challenge.
Yes. Yes. And so he's the person that let me know that there were scientists in Taiwan that found the Texas star and sent me a bunch of photos. And so that's amazing. Like I would not have even known. And they kind of on their Facebook, on the Taiwan mushroom Facebook group, they were all kind of making jokes like, haha, we have the Taiwan star. And I think that's like so funny because as much as it's kind of fun, like, yeah, we have a Texas star. It feels like a singing competition or something. And I personally liked the name the Devil Cigar, and I could see why that didn't go over in the legislature. But I think that it's like, now that I've heard it hiss at me and like do all the things that it's done, like the connection I've had with this mushroom now, like Devil Cigar just means so much more to me now. And it's also found in Taiwan, so let's not make it a geo-specific name.
Well, anyway, we thought it was really cool and we wanted to share that with you.
I love it. It's perfect myceliation, right?
Right.
And
Well,
did you
Angel,
have-
thank you so much
Yeah,
thank you so much for presenting to us. This has
absolutely.
been on our calendar for months and it was worth the wait.
Yay.
We hope to have you come back to present to us again in the future. So
Yes, yeah. And Angie, she's also doing the same presentation.
okay.
So she's also available to teach future classes as well.
Awesome.
And yeah, and I just wanted to, for our own education reports, did you happen to get a count of how many people were able to make it today?
Yes, we had 54.
54. Perfect. All right. Appreciate you all.
All right.
All
Good
right.
night,
Have a good
everyone.
night.